All right.
Yep.
This is what I thought we'd run through today. There's quite a lot on here, so I'll try and be quick. Um, Put that back up there for a minute so you can see it all. But this is what I was just chatting about. Just talk at me anytime you want to say anything, wave at the camera, make a noise. I'd much rather hear you guys talking than talk myself or listen to my own voice with its sort of droning monotone. Everyone will be asleep. But right, so first thing I thought we'd do is recap what we talked about on the last one, just for the benefit of anyone that wasn't on the last one or hasn't watched the video yet. We talked about how engaging people in non-developer roles in Umbraco requires an awareness of Umbraco itself and an awareness of the benefit that I get as a non-developer by engaging with Umbraco and with the Umbraco community. And there's a gap there, I think, that something like this group can fill or try to fill. And once you have people engaged, then that brings their expertise and skills to Umbraco and to the Umbraco community, making it a kind of broader church, I guess. So in order to do that, we probably need to create a sense that this Umbraco is for people like me if I'm not a developer. And we talked a bit about internal advocacy, so doing internal learning sessions in your organization or your agency to create like a shared understanding of Umbraco architecture and terminology and capabilities. Erica talked a bit about how, as a UX or UI designer, knowing about doc types and how that structure works really helps her do her job. So bringing Umbraco to the front of discussions about projects, that kind of thing. We also talked a bit about external advocacy, which is like bringing people in other roles to meetups. You might have internal people in your organization that do content editing for projects, bring them along to a meetup. The other side of that is that we need to provide content at those meetups for people in those roles. Blog posts, videos, social media stuff. We talked a bit about having HQ do Umbraco tips on Twitter for people who aren't developers, that kind of thing, which I thought was a great idea. And then we talked a bit about the communication channels that developers use versus non-developers, and how we can join those two groups together in terms of communication channels. We talked a bit about a space on R and that kind of thing, but I wanted to just chat a bit more about the way that people in different roles communicate. This took ages, this slide, you can see it's hours of my day. So developers, I mean, this is probably a bit of a, it's probably not true, and I wouldn't class myself as a developer necessarily, but things like GitHub and the Umbraco Slack channel and Stack Overflow and other things, very specific developer-focused channels where people speak developer to each other. For non-developers, obviously, there are lots of different sorts of non-developer, and they might have different channels for different roles, like a designer might communicate differently to a project manager, for example. But I was trying to think of things that sit in the middle that might sit in that overlap. It is not cut and dried, really, because something like our Umbraco requires someone to already being aware of Umbraco and engaged with it to a certain extent. But Twitter and Trello and meetups, if you happen to bring people along, might be places where that overlap might happen. Any thoughts on any of that? I'll just crack on.
Just on the kind of overlap thing, I think it is an issue that we're all seeing just now, because I think a lot of the Umbraco community is on Twitter. But if you're not on Twitter, then what do you have? You kind of look at our, and that can be pretty quiet at times, or it can be very devy, I think. Yeah. So it's kind of like, and this is something I've been struggling with for a while, is where is this middle ground that everybody can come to and kind of chat Umbraco as a whole? You know what I mean? It's a tough one.
It is a tough one, particularly if, as a developer, I think the developer community talk about Umbraco a lot. But if you're a designer, you probably don't talk about Umbraco a lot. So then that channel might not actually exist for you in that overlap. So there might be a job to do in terms of not just providing a space where that overlap can happen, but driving people to it using channels that they already use. So it's not straightforward. Hi, Lou. How are you doing?
Sorry, I was having my speaker issues. I couldn't hear what was going on for the past 5 minutes.
Oh, you haven't missed much. And obviously it'll all be on the video, so you'll be able to watch it back later. But
cool.
Any thoughts on this overlap thing? Or
I'll be honest, I was trying to figure out how to get the speaker to work, so I wasn't really paying attention.
Not a test. Fine.
But I'll try and get up to speed.
No worries. Okay. I mean, the next bit is about exactly that. How do we grow that overlap? And one of the things that has been happening over the last couple of weeks has been that there's been a bit of chat. I know that Niels Lingzor, I don't know how you pronounce his name, sorry, Niels, has been trying to get GitHub somewhere in the middle here. Not necessarily as a channel that non-developers would use all the time, but what he's done is added some new labels to GitHub issues. So there's now a category/UI label. Let me see if I can pull that up. Hold on. So this is the UI one, I think. Yeah, so category UI. There's got a couple that are community up for grabs. So this is potentially a space on GitHub where if you happen to be able to talk to the designers in your organization or the designers in your agency, they could look through this list and look at things they might be able to help out with once we've got them engaged, I guess. An example is, I mean, this is one that we were looking at a couple of weeks back. It's Niels posted this attempt to improve how property content inheritance looks in the editor. So this is his original thing, and then Nick commented, and then I came up with this solution here. But I think the point is that this is not a developer conversation at this point. This is a design/UI UX conversation, but it's in a space on GitHub where it's discoverable by developers, and a developer might come along and go, this is great, I'll pick this up and implement it and turn it into a pull request. But it means you're getting the expertise from people who are not developers in the first place. So I thought that was a pretty neat idea. This is the UX one. I haven't looked at most of these, but again, we've got community up for grabs labels on some of these. So that is something that people in those roles could definitely go away and have a look at. There's another UX. I don't think it's that one. Oh yeah, Matt. So Matt was talking about the content apps space and about whether in V8 the content apps would be better rather than just being a certain number and then a drop down. Whether there could be some sort of user pinning of content apps to the top of that area. So this is a conversation on Twitter that's all about pinning content apps to the top of a content page. It sort of gets, it's a really good conversation, but it sort of gets lost on Twitter. So how we turn that into something, maybe, I don't know, it maybe ought to be a thing that's now in GitHub with a label on it, but I don't really know how we move from this to having it on GitHub with the right label on it. Anyone got any thoughts? Nope.
Would it be possible to make an area on GitHub that's kind of like an area for open conversation, so that this kind of what Matt's been saying on Twitter there doesn't just kind of get lost into his feed and it's actually documented somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not completely sure I know GitHub well enough to know whether that's possible or not, but I think that would be a great idea. I think it does need potentially somebody. It might even be a function for this group, the Umbraco Practitioners group, to look out on the internet to sort of curate stuff and go, okay, I've been involved in this, or I've seen that conversation, and that feels like it ought to be something that people are chatting about here. I don't think it's straightforward necessarily at this stage, but I think these are the sorts of challenges that we need to try and find solutions to. All right. What's that one? Accessibility. That's part of the next bit. Let's go back here.
So what have I missed? Sorry, Mike. Why can't we copy that from Twitter into GitHub?
Oh no, we can. Yeah, I guess that's the point. Is at the moment that people aren't probably, because it doesn't really feel like it's anyone's job to take that Twitter conversation, put it into GitHub. Yeah. So there's a bit of a gap in the process that probably requires some thought as to how it would be solved, but I don't have a particular idea about how that would work.
Gotcha.
All right.
I think as well, because we've kind of got GitHub, which it tends to be very much kind of a dev environment, and then you've got our, which is the open conversation, like for historical information or just general discussions. But I have noticed a couple of times that quite often a chat will start on Twitter and it'll grow arms and legs and more people will feed into it. And if you're not part of that massive conversation, it's completely lost.
Mm.
And I think that's what you're saying as well, is that these conversations are really important conversations that should be had. But I guess there isn't a location in our that sits perfectly. Like yesterday I started a new conversation about the CodeGuard and UBuddy stuff, but I've had to put it under getting started with Umbraco and put a version number against it.
Yeah.
And it's a general discussion. It's not a problem I'm having with Umbraco. It's just a general, here's some information kind of thing. And maybe it's a solution that we're trying to force a solution into GitHub, when in actual fact, if we had the chance to reinvent it'd maybe be a better place. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a good shout.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Again, I think the issue with our is that the people who are in these sorts of roles potentially may not touch Umbraco as a product most of the time, so they're unlikely to be going to our and looking for stuff. But I think that one of the benefits of our, and one of the benefits of GitHub as well, whichever way it sits in the kind of order of likelihood of getting picked up, and I think it is probably Twitter is least likely, and then it moves to our, and then it moves to GitHub, and then someone will do it or something like that. But at least all this stuff gives you something that you can link to, something tangible, a URL that you can then pass on to people to have the right conversations. So I think that's probably one of the key things. But I do think there's some process missing, or someone to take responsibility for joining that stuff up. So,
because I suppose if it was on our as well, then you've got a chance that search engines will pick it up as well, which then kind of gets non-developers or practitioners, if they're searching for a question about Umbraco, you never know, it actually might point them to our.
Yeah.
And then that starts the conversation going. So it's trying to feed things in, which Twitter doesn't do, GitHub doesn't do very well either. So yeah, it's just looking at options, I guess.
All right, cool. So maybe that'd be something that we as a group, or people who are watching this video once it goes up, can have a think about and maybe bring to the next meetup. That'd be great. Accessibility is the next thing I was going to chat about, because obviously there are accessibility professionals and also now a category accessibility label on GitHub as well, which has got a few things in it. This was very much sort of driven by what Mike Macy's been doing recently. Go back to here. He's got this initiative going to create an accessibility team around the back office for Umbraco. There's a link here to the original conversation on the Our forum, but he's also created a Slack channel on the Umbraco Slack and the Trello board. You can find a link to that in the post above. And that's got quite a lot of initial traction, which I think is great. And again, it's pulling in people who've got is it? There are people who've got technical accessibility skills, so how to code things in an accessible way. But there are also people who've got kind of broader accessibility skills, and those people ought to be involved in those conversations as well, and they probably are being. I've been away for a couple of weeks, so I haven't really been able to keep track of what's going on. So, but again, pulling in people who are non-developers into the conversation, I think is absolutely fantastic. This is what I was talking about before about how we get people to these places. So it's good to have a linkable location, but we still need people who wouldn't normally use those channels to get to that stuff, to find it. So we might use the channels that they already use to do that. It might be that having got a conversation going on we need to tweet about it, or people internally need to send it around to their design team or something like that. I don't know. So that question at the bottom is part of that gap that we need to fill, I guess. Okay, that's all of that section. I had this idea for a discussion, for an open discussion, which might be a little bit difficult to do with this number of people, but I posted this question on Twitter earlier last week, I think. How could your role be made easier through increased knowledge and awareness of Umbraco? It's sort of purposely a fairly vague question, and it got, as you would expect, 0 replies on Twitter, which I thought was slightly indicative of the problem that we've got. But I don't know if it's worthwhile us having this chat now. When I talk about your role, it could be you as a developer. So you're a developer. What do you come across in your role where a lack of Umbraco context somewhere else in the project chain makes your job as a developer more difficult? I don't know. I know that James, you're a developer. I don't know whether Lou or Rachel, you are developers or have other roles.
I'm a UI UX designer, so
Fantastic.
I'm not a developer.
But with Umbraco experience, I guess.
My experience with Umbraco is we have a team where I work who deal with the Umbraco side of things. So I'm aware of using it as like a content editor or for publishing content and things like that. But in terms of actually coding and building is something I've never touched that. Have
you ever been involved in discussions with your development team about how they implement property editors and things like that to make the content editing experience nicer for people? Or is your UI UX stuff all front end?
It's pretty much all front end. I think there was a topic of conversation about how we could make the back end a bit more user friendly, but I'm not sure how far that went.
No.
So I can't really comment on that.
Rachel, what about you?
I'm a developer.
Okay. Have you come across, like, for example, do you get sent designs of stuff to develop that where you feel like somebody who knew a bit more about Umbraco would have, I don't know, I mean, I'm fishing, I guess, a bit, but...
we work quite closely.
Right.
Roles. So we work from the start on making sure that everything aligns. So from the whole the life cycle, that's fine. I think it's handover to people who haven't got experience of Umbraco, so outside of the development. And it's beyond the showcases. What I mean is sort of you give it to the content managers to work with, and I think them having an easy point to look at and to have some kind of point of reference so that they can be involved in some of the decisions we make, especially if they're new to Umbraco. That'd be good, those kind of conversations.
Are your content editors at the client end, or is it all in-house? I'm not sure whether you work for an agency or for in-house.
I work for an agency, right, so okay. Yeah, we've got the in-house and the clients, yeah.
Okay. All right. I mean, I think it's a strength and challenge of Umbraco that there are so many different ways of doing things that it's quite hard to produce sort of robust handover documentation without doing lots of work every time you do it. Yeah, I don't know really.
I think the guided tours at the start is a nice way of doing it, and we've also been using Bookshelf.
Oh, yeah.
Reference point. So there's a manual for people to look at, but I think handovers and documentation going forward is always the weak part of any process, I think.
Yeah. Hi, Alan. Right.
Hey, sorry guys.
That's okay. Yeah, we were just chatting about the question I posted on Twitter this week about whether people in their roles have come across areas where more knowledge elsewhere would have made their job a bit easier. More knowledge and awareness of Umbraco would have made their job a bit easier.
Okay, sure.
I know that making the content editing experience is something that there's a lot of chat about. But I wondered whether there were skills kind of maybe earlier in the process that would be useful. Anyway.
So does that kind of fit in with, the UI frameworks we were talking about previously?
Frameworks as in?
Sorry, as in like Sketch and Figma and things like that.
Yeah, it does. Well, I've got a sexy demo to show later on.
Oh, cool.
I've been doing it.
Okay.
If I say so myself.
Yeah, one thing we've been doing for non-developers is actually our account managers.
Yep.
And basically doing training for the account managers to show them basically what we build for a client and what Umbraco actually is from scratch. So when somebody kind of puts a brief in to us and goes, oh, can you build us a site? And we go, yeah, but what do you want the site to look like? They don't understand that Umbraco is actually empty when you first install it. So we've been doing some training with our account managers, one, to show them exactly what Umbraco is, but two, well, how customizable it is. So when a client phones up and says, oh, this is broken, or oh, I'd love to be able to do X, Y, and Z, the account manager can actually go straight to them and go, yeah, we can do that, rather than this kind of middle person kind of like having to go client, account manager, dev team, account manager, you know what I mean? So it kind of cuts that out. So we've been trying to kind of bring them up to speed a bit as well and get them bought in a bit more into what Umbraco actually is.
Yeah. There's always two design jobs, aren't there? I mean, on a website project, you talk about the design of the front end of the website quite a lot, certainly as an agency, but you have to design how you're going to get the content in as well. And those two things, I think, should happen in parallel. The design of how it comes out should happen at the same time as the design it goes in. So there's probably less of that stuff because you've got quite a lot of sort of starting point, but the decisions that you make about or you know, the context, like how much content is there here, how many news articles are you likely to have, how often they're going to get updated, that stuff influences your sort of architectural decisions about how you're going to set the back end up, and that stuff should be happening at the same time, I think. So
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I think that was pretty useful. I think I might try and think of a discussion topic for the next one that's a bit less open, or if anyone's got any other ideas, that would be super good. So earlier on I talked about if we're going to engage non-developers, we need to provide non-developer content or Umbraco related content for people in other roles so that they feel like there's something in this for them. Erica talked about the fact that knowing about doc types helped her as a UI designer. So I was thinking, okay, what kind of content might we put out there that would show a designer about something about Umbraco and something about doc types without it being here's a talk about Umbraco which a designer might not care about, for example. So I came up with this idea for a talk about designing more broadly with content management in mind. I'm going to run through some bullet points very quickly. This is not a talk that I'm about to do. It's an idea for a structure for a talk. So it's just bullets really. So target audience, UI designer with no real knowledge of Umbraco, I guess. So talking about the difference between structured content and unstructured content, what the benefits of structured content provides. So it's modular, consistency, reusable in different contexts, opportunity for additional functionality like faceting, that kind of thing. The challenges of structured content though as well, so like potentially restrictive, requires a good understanding up front of the requirements and the shape of content. You might run into issues with where future requirements don't match the model of the content that you've set up. I don't know, there are some challenges that with structured content that need to be addressed or have some awareness of. The level of flexibility of the design, so how much layout freedom you're going to give content editors. You shouldn't be able to break the design with the content, but you shouldn't also the design shouldn't constrain the content either. Can the navigation cope with more items or levels of depth? What if a content editor adds 7 teasers instead of the 3 that we thought about when we did the design? Should we limit it to 3 because the page would look terrible with 7, or is that more of a content editor's decision about how many there are, so how flexible we make that? What happens if a title wraps onto 3 lines, or a button, the text you put into a button makes it exceed the width of its container, that sort of thing. I talked a bit about volume of content, so what if the editor adds twice as much content into one teaser as another one, or that kind of thing. How much stylistic control will you give people? Is it just an RTE, or is it a series of individual fields, or a mixture of the two? How do you make those sorts of decisions about how much control over the text you give people? So that might be to do with accessibility as well. You want to retain semantic documents, but you don't want people to be choosing an H2 style because what they want is big text rather than an actual heading, so that kind of thing. So this is where most of the Umbraco stuff lives, in this sort of talk. So you need to understand a CMS if you're going to design a website for it. So what can you do? What's the overall structural model? You know, understanding how pages are constructed, sections, trees, doc types, list views, property editors. And I think it's useful at this point to use actual CMS language with designers. And I talked a bit about how architectural choices influence the content editing experience and the ability of the site to grow and flex with future requirements. And this part is where talking to developers, a designer talking to a developer about what Umbraco can do is super useful. Understanding the content. So the extent of the content when you launch will drive decisions about user interface and interaction design, but also influence content architecture and editing experience. How often will content get updated? That kind of thing. I've written design architecture, but I did this a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember what I said that for. Oh yeah, so here we go. Look, designing for a content management system requires systems thinking. It's not just about visual design. It's about navigation design and interaction design and motion design and accessibility standards and that kind of thing. So you need to know the shape of the content. You need to know which UI components might be required to deliver that content. How would those components work on different devices? How would those components work if you put one component against another component? Those relationships, if you're giving people the freedom to build a page, have we considered the combinations of components on a page and how that all works together? And then a bit about design documentation. So produce a style guide and guidance. This is for the front end, guidance on the correct and recommended usage of the components, but annotate that design with content management considerations and potentially even mock up content editing experiences at that point as well. So this is sort of where I'd got to with this. It's like I say, it's not a talk, it's like an idea for the kind of content I think might be useful for, in this case, a designer talking about Umbraco at like an Umbraco meetup or something like that. Has anyone got any thoughts? No. Good.
I know it's really good. I'd like to see the full talk. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, I think I might get a designer involved. I think it's what I worry about slightly is if you're trying to engage roles in Umbraco or in the Umbraco community who are not people who talk about Umbraco or in Umbraco all the time, like a designer, like a UI designer, for example, you need to talk UI designer language to those people, not Umbraco language to them, which is why I sort of abstracted the idea for this talk away from Umbraco, but you would use Umbraco as the examples that you give people all the way through it. So it's planting the awareness without talking, using language that they're not familiar with. So.
Sure, and bridging that gap is a very difficult but beneficial thing to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's great. Is it worth, I don't know if you have already, so feel free to say, shut up. Is it worth speaking to people who do the IA and the design and say what were the top 3 things they wish they'd known?
Yeah.
To start working because I'm sure we've all got contacts like that within our organisations, and also to someone who does SEO in our organisations to say what did they wish they'd know was a restriction or a benefit of Umbraco.
Yeah, I think that stuff is excellent, and the sort of thing that I could that we could post out on Twitter and get some responses to, or the sort of thing that the people in this group or the people watching this video could ask internally as well, and then bring to the next one. That'd be excellent. Really good idea.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I think it not only would work really well as kind of a refresher to anyone that has already been designing stuff for Umbraco, but also for people who are brand new to it. Like some of that, I feel like I could have probably used that when I first started.
Yeah, I mean, that too. Yeah.
I think that it's difficult coming up with this stuff because you think you're talking about stuff that the people who are listening to it already know about, and they're thinking, nah, this guy, you know. But I think you're right. I think that people who are listening to these sorts of talks, even if they know this stuff already, you catch the people who don't know this stuff already. But the people who do know it already, it's like, oh yeah, I know that already. I'm doing this right, you know. So there's a confirmation thing there as well. So, all right, happy with that. That's good. Thank you for the feedback. Very useful. I'll carry on with that. This is. Owen, this was something that you posted to me on Slack about capturing content editor frustrations inside the back office.
Yep.
I don't know. I've just put some bullets on here, but I don't know if you want to talk about this. Don't worry, I won't spring it on you. But
no, it's okay. I'll just have a quick read of that. Yeah. So basically, it kind of goes on from the training that we do with our account managers. We're also looking at actually going out to clients and sitting in their offices and just watching what they do and listening to them and seeing their frustration, like basically the kind of like catch points where they're like, oh, I wish I could just do whatever. And 9 times out of 10, we'd probably be able to go, actually, let me just fire up my laptop. There you go, it's fixed. You know, and it'll be really simple things like that. But from a content editor's point of view, they think, many of them think, I'm not saying they all do, but many of them think the final product that we give them is set in stone and nothing can be changed. And basically it's just a misunderstanding when the website was built and the brief was created that they just have to put up with it now. So what we're trying to get round is finding ways of breaking that barrier of them, first of all, thinking this is going to cost me X amount of money to get fixed, when in actual fact it might be a 5-minute job and we just do it as a, there you go. I mean, it takes none of our time up, so you might as well just do it. But also just making their life much easier, because many of us know how simple Umbraco is actually to use if it's designed correctly. But on the flip side, we know how frustrating it can be if we've inherited a website from someone that's built it in a horrendous way. So it's just trying to make content editors have the best possible experience that we can, and this is just one of the ways that we've thought about trying to fix that.
Yeah, and even if you can't fix it straight away, you still have that the value of that feedback for a future round of development anyway. So
yeah.
But I think, yeah, the vehicle by which people, I mean, it's fine if you can go and stand over people while they're editing, but a lot of the time you can't do that. So it's like, how might somebody who's using an Umbraco in terms of editing content day by day, how might they report that stuff that they're finding frustrating? Is it a button in the back office? Where would that feedback go if they submit it somewhere? What would people do with it? You know, I don't know the answers to that stuff, but it's an interesting challenge, and it might be something that someone could mock up or stick on one of the GitHub issues or something like that to explore. I don't know if you've done any work in terms of ideas around how that might work, Owen, but
we have looked at kind of a dashboard in the back office, which will hook into something like, we don't have it currently, but it'd be something like Zendesk or some reporting tool that basically the user's already in the back office, so they're not having to fire up their email or try and remember what the email address was to send it to the developers. They just fill in the form in the back office, put in as much detail, maybe a screenshot or something like this, explaining their issue, and then just firing it off to kind of like this inbox that we would deal with as and when we had time.
Yeah,
it's kind of like the intercom tool or what Umbraco's support use on the cloud. Yeah, be frictionless, nice.
Yeah,
excellent. I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because a content editor, like, that sort of feedback feels like you're just complaining about something the whole time. But actually, there might be stuff that's just like, oh, if this was just like that, it would take 5 minutes out of this process every time I have to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not broken; it works, but I don't know. Spotting opportunities for improvement, I guess.
Yeah, it was like we were round at a client's a couple of weeks ago. It was just a general conversation before the actual meeting kicked off, and they're like, "Oh, it's really annoying that I can't remember. It was something like a character limit. They were like, "Oh, we're limited to 25 characters for whatever it is. We always need about 30, so we're having to cut down every single time." It was like, I think it was a headline or something.
Right.
And we're like, well, we've had a look at this, and yeah, we could make it 40 and it would work for you. And they're like, oh, we've just been putting up with this and having to re-edit all our headings, and you know what I mean? So it was something simple like that that made us think, actually, if one client's having this issue, how many other people are having similar issues that we can actually fix pretty quickly for them?
Yeah. Fantastic. All right, I'll move on. Where we've got, what was it, 35 minutes in. So I'm going to talk a bit about this back office UI kit that I'm working on using Sketch and Abstract. Lou, you or UI UX, have you come across? Do you use Sketch? Have you come across Abstract?
I use Sketch. I haven't actually heard of Abstract before.
And you're going to be blown away. All right. So this UI kit, what is it for? So what am I doing this for? Primarily, it's to make it easy for people, anyone, to construct mock-ups of the Umbraco back office. You can see immediately how useful that would be for developers of packages or content apps, because they would be able to mock up ideas for how their content apps or packages the interface might work for those. It also, I think, potentially useful for UX or UI professionals who are interested in the product to propose changes to functionality of the back office without having to be developers and do pull requests and coding. It's like, I can mock up this thing. I think this would work better like that. And it's a tool that people can use in order to contribute to the product in a way that is not with code, right? I think probably a lot of people are doing this already. They're mocking up back office stuff, but everyone does it their own way and recreating it all the time. So someone might do it in, Balsamic, and someone else might do it. But the end result is the same. Okay, what I've done is very work in progress. It's nowhere near done yet, but I'll show you where we've got to. I want to talk a bit about the difference between UI kit and a design system. A design system leads a product, I think. So it's part of the upfront design process, tries the rationale, make sure that everything is consistent, and off the back of that, you create the product, or in rounds of iterations or whatever. Whereas a UI kit follows the product in the sense that the product is designed, and the UI kit just gives people the ability to mock stuff up in using that UI kit. And what I'm doing is very much UI kit, not design system. The challenges of UI kit, though, is that it's hard to keep up to date, particularly in this scenario where Umbraco changes all the time from multiple sources. So there are pull requests and lots of community people doing changes. So the product itself changes a lot, and there are rapid release cycles. And me, as someone who's producing a UI kit, would have to keep up to date with all of those changes. That would be quite difficult to do. Distributing a UI kit and making sure that people have the latest version can be a challenge, I think. And it's also, I think, hard in this sort of scenario to manage people's input and feedback on a UI kit. All of this stuff is where Abstract comes in. Abstract is essentially Git for Sketch. So you get a master branch in Abstract that is your current single source of truth for your UI kit, but then you can create branches, and you can create multiple branches and work on things without breaking that master version, and then you can merge those changes back into the master branch when they're ready or kind of approved, I guess. Everyone can see the changes, everyone can see all the branches. It's got baked-in commenting, so people who've got access, I think you can there's unlimited free guest viewer accounts. So if you're a guest viewer, you can go onto the web portal, inspect everything like with an inspector, so you can see if you wanted to, dimensions and font sizes and everything, but also comment and draw boxes around things and that sort of thing. So it's kind of baked in commenting. You've always got the latest files. You can export the sketch files so that you can use them locally. You can add multiple collaborators. So in terms of the inspection and export, that's a viewer role. But if you want people to help you do the actual sketch work, keep it up to date and change things and make suggestions and things, you can add collaborator accounts, help spread the workload, keep it up to date, maybe even get some involvement from HQ. I know that Niels is super interested in what we're doing here. So you can see a scenario where we're starting off with it like this as a post-design UI kit, but over time given enough interest and enough involvement, it might become something front end that drives the product design rather than just something that follows the product. Why Sketch? I mean, there are lots of tools out there. Sketch is probably pretty ubiquitous for web design on the Mac at the moment. It's really great for symbols and libraries and overrides, which I'll show in a minute. You can open sketch files in XD. I'm not completely sure how robust that is. I think you can import sketch files into Figma. Haven't tried it. Not sure how robust that is either. So there's lots of testing stuff to do here. But Abstract is also working on support for XD and Illustrator files. I'm not committing to do a UI kit in XD as well because I think I would die. Right, let me show you. I apologise in advance if the resolution of my screen is an issue. Can you all see my screen still?
Yeah.
Full width? Right, okay, fine. All right, so this is Abstract. It's a desktop app and a web app. The web app is 95% the same as the desktop app. The only thing you can't do in the web app is launch the sketch files and make changes and save stuff back to the product. So the web app is more an inspection, like a viewer tool, rather than where you actually do the work. This is the what's this called? Organization. And then this is a project. So I've called it U8 because I didn't like typing that day. So these are the master files. You can see that there are lots of sketch libraries here. I've tried to separate these libraries out into separate libraries to do separate jobs. Not completely sure I've got this right yet. I'm sort of learning a lot of this stuff as I go, so it's not going to be right to start with. If I try and edit one of these files, you can just double click to edit, but it won't let you edit files from the master branch. You have to have a branch open to edit stuff. So I've got one here for core property editors, which I've just started working on at the moment. But for the purposes of what we're doing today, I'm going to just create a new branch called demo. Okay. So I'm now in the demo branch, and you can see that I've got all of the, it's like a whole new copy of all of the sketch files. And these are the libraries in it. So if I add a new file, I'll create a new sketch file. Demo. So what I'm going to do here is sort of recreate what I did on the video that I posted on Twitter. Okay. Are we all impressed with this so far? It's kind of like if you've got a developer brain, you're going to be like, oh, wow, at this point. All right, so I've got my demo sketch file. Let me just show you some of this stuff that I've got in here. So colors, let's open the colors sketch file. This is pretty much what you would expect it to look like. If Sketch ever opens. Okay, here we go. So this is the actual page in Sketch, which is, I've got some symbols in here. These are the actual symbols, and the page is just examples of those symbols with some extra stuff thrown on to make it easy to read. But these symbols have got names, which there's a naming convention, color / button / secondary, that sort of thing. Just to make it easy to use, let me show icons for a minute. This is just to give you a sense of kind of how this stuff hangs together. So these are, again, different symbols with different icons on it. And again, they've got icon / arrow down, that sort of thing. Navigation. Can I open? Okay, no, that's fine. So here I've got breadcrumbs. I've got the main navigation here. I've got some left navigation items. I think there's a main language switcher, tree title. There's a bunch of stuff going on here. This is an individual item, an individual navigation item, and you've got all of the. I can't see the side of the screen myself, so I'm going to have to. You guys are in the way. Just pause in a minute. So you can see this background. Hold on. Wait. This is a great demo. So you can see that if I select the text, it's got a text style associated with it, and these are the text style and the text content is all stuff that you can override. If I click on the symbol itself, you can see which things you let people override when they drop an instance of this symbol onto a page. So you can switch some of this stuff off. If you don't want people to change some of this stuff, you can untick this stuff and people can't override it. Let me just open the demo file that I created and we'll get some stuff going. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to so you can see I've got access to all of those shared libraries just by virtue of the fact that I'm inside the same branch as those files. So if I go to, here we go, a browser. I'm going to pop a browser on. That's what a browser symbol looks like. And then inside that, I'm going to put, grab this so I can see what I'm doing. Yeah, let's do some navigation in. So again, I'm just going navigation, main navigation, let's use all of it. Right, so at the moment, by default, because on that symbol, the content thing is selected by default. If I want to change that, if I'm mocking up something to do with the media section, I can just go over here and say the style for content. I don't want it to be item active. I want it to be just a normal item, and then I can change the highlight color to none like that. So now I want the media item to be the active item, and I want the media highlight bar to be like that. So I mean, I've just done a couple of overrides and now it's a media item, and I haven't got to do anything with the symbols itself. I'm just overriding stuff. And if I wanted to add another navigation item onto the end of this, I could do that here. Let me just move it up in the thing. So here's a new one, and you want to change the text of it, you can by section. You can override all of this stuff, change the width of it, you know. So super easy to, just with a single symbol to build all of this stuff up. Let me undo this stuff and make me back in the content section in a minute. All right, okay. I'm going to add a content pane, and I'm going to add a tree. So these are just empty panes to give me the general layout of the page. So it's starting to look like the content section. I'm going to put a language switcher in. Where's that? There's probably content. No, I can't remember where I've put language switcher. This is probably no, language switcher, here we go. Yeah, it's probably just because I haven't looked at this for a while. Right, so this is the language switcher at the top. And again, I can change the language if I want just by overriding the text. Let's put a content and then we'll put some menu items on. Navigation tree, item level 1. Okay. Because these are all the right size, I just have to align it with the thing above it. So let's call this one home. It's already, well, I'm going to change the icon from an arrow right to an arrow down, because then we'll show this as being expanded. Two. Got 3 things there. I don't want any icons on any of those. Anyway, don't worry too much. So this might be about us. What do we think about this so far? I mean, please talk while I'm doing this, because it's pretty boring.
I think there's a lot of work gone into that. It looks amazing. I guess you could also kind of package pre-composed pages as starting points, as components, as within this as well. Can you?
What do you mean? Sorry, do that
so
again?
The way, like, you're at the moment, you're using, like, I suppose, atomic components to build a page, but I suppose it's probably possible to have a pre-composed bigger component for as a starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. In the same way that for the navigation,
if they need to.
Yeah, so for the navigation, I've got this component that's got all the menu items in, but that itself is made up of other stuff. Yeah, so you could see, you can have a situation where the whole tree comes in, that kind of thing. I'm just going to do some of this stuff at the top. So there's an actions menu that goes up here.
I really like abstract. Never heard of it. And it seems like it's exactly what you need to make that kind of project manageable.
Change this to info and then change the icon. You know, I mean, it's super easy, all of this stuff. I won't carry on, but you get the idea of it. Obviously, what you can do, this is what you can do in terms of mocking up UI, using the symbol libraries that I've set up. The symbol libraries are probably the key for the work that I'm doing. But you can, inside here, inside Abstract, you can export all of these files as well. So you can download all of these symbol libraries onto your local machine, and then just create a file in your local machine and link it to those libraries there, so you're not reliant on the internet the whole time to link here. I think that, just as I said on the slides, I just think that Abstract solves all of the challenges that I found with creating and maintaining a UI kit like this. It's not reliant on one person, because you can have multiple collaborators. There's massive visibility. Everyone can see what's changed or suggest new changes. So I think it's got super amounts of potential. There is quite a lot of work to do on it still, but and I probably need to tidy up my demo. But there we go.
I think that's great, Mike. It looks awesome as well. And you've definitely piqued my interest in Abstract. I'll be having a look at that tomorrow.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I hadn't heard of it either, but it seems really good. They're constantly updating it, releasing new updates. There's a load of videos that they've produced that you can watch. So yeah, I've been really impressed with it.
Have you mocked up the tabs versus accordions?
No. But I think, look, if that conversation that we were having with Matt on Twitter about whether you pin these content apps or not, so, like, you know, you might envisage a situation where there's a bit of UI. Come on, my machine's going up. There's a bit of UI in here that acts as an expansion. So, like, you can pin some here, but when you click on this thing here, it opens up a series of ones that haven't been pinned, and that's a user choice which ones appear up here rather than a developer's choice or a content app provider's choice. So they get to pick the ones up here that they use all the time, and you can relegate the ones that you don't use all the time into something that's hidden behind something that you have to initiate as a so already, I mean, like, I've just stuck a rectangle in the middle of a thing, but you can see it gives you already the ability to try stuff out in terms of user experience without having to code anything at all, you know. and really what I'm hoping for is that this ends up being no different really to mocking this stuff up using grey boxes. It's just that the grey boxes that you're using happen to look like the actual thing. I'm just giving people something that looks like a content app button and something that looks like a tree, and they can just drop it on and change the text and away they go, you know. So
yeah, that's awesome.
all right, good. Right, finally, where are we at? 55 minutes, perfect. Help with this meetup question mark. So if you or anyone else is interested in helping organise this, let me know. There's quite a lot of stuff to think about every month, but if you want to contribute a short talk or have ideas about the format of it or the content that we're talking about or the approach to the whole thing, I'm very happy to have those conversations. I'd quite like to spread the load and share all of the glory. I mean, you know. Also, this was an idea, practitioners website. Oops, hold on. Yeah, so it'd be really great to have a website at some point for this group, because I think that one of the things I talked about at the beginning is having online resource for people who are not necessarily developers but would like content that's relevant to their roles. So if there's somewhere where we can point people that has got links to articles, links to videos, slide decks, resources, new content that's been generated or content that they've curated from elsewhere on the internet, that would be super useful for people. Maybe a bit of I was going to say forum, but that might be just making it a bit more complicated rather than easier. Ideas, thoughts, volunteers welcome. Anyone want a little V8 project ? Smiley face. Might be something worth thinking about. But yeah, get in touch if you're interested in helping out with that. Thank you very much. Here's some stuff about what we can do next. Good. Anyone got any closing comments or thoughts for today's, or start a new conversation if you want? We've got a few minutes. So. Nope. Awesome.
I was going to say I really enjoyed this, Mike. I think what you've been working on is really good as well. So
thank you very much.
You could see where this is going as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I really appreciate the work you've put into it. A lot of thinking there, so thank you.
No worries. I'd really like to try and push this month and in the run up to the next one to try and get a bit of content coming from elsewhere. So I don't not just so I don't spend an hour talking, but so that it's taking shape from other people and not being driven necessarily by what I think. I think that the more opinions and thoughts and stuff we can get in from other people, the more useful this will be for people. So. But yeah, I'll tweet some stuff out and hopefully get those conversations going. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. It's been an absolute.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
It's been brilliant. Thank you.
No worries at all. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.